Have you ever wondered why a father would trust a little boy with a secret he wouldn't even tell the rest of his family? The night my father made that decision, the rain outside wouldn't stop. The electricity suddenly went out. The whole house became silent. Dad lit an old candle, looked at me, and said, "Robbie, tonight, I'm not asking you to be my son. I'm asking you to become the guardian of our family's future." I froze. I didn't understand a single word. He opened an old wooden box, took out something wrapped in a faded cloth, placed it into my hands, and whispered, "Promise me, no matter what happens, you will never let anyone destroy what our family has built." I looked into his eyes, raised my little hand, and made that promise. I thought it was just another conversation between a father and his son. I had no idea that promise would cost us everything. Our home, our happiness, our reputation, even the people we loved, turned against us. For years, everyone believed my father had failed, but they never knew he had already placed our family's future into the hands of one little boy. 15 years later, the truth finally came out, and the same people who once called my father a failure could no longer believe what that secret promise had created. My name is Robert Dowson, but everyone I love has always called me Robbie. This is the story of the secret promise that changed our family's destiny forever. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional family success stories, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments. I'd love to see how far our stories are reaching around the world. Your support inspires us to create more powerful stories every day. Now, let's begin. The next morning, nothing looked different. The sun rose, the birds were singing, and my father went to work as if nothing had happened. But every time he looked at me, he smiled differently, almost as if he knew something that nobody else did. And deep inside, I couldn't stop thinking about one question. What was hidden inside that old wooden box? The entire day, I couldn't stop thinking about that wooden box. Dad had hidden it inside the oldest cabinet in our house. Not even Mom knew it existed. That evening, I finally gathered the courage to ask him, "Dad, what's inside the box?" He smiled, shook his head, and quietly replied, "One day, you'll understand." Nothing more, nothing less. But from that day, I realized that box wasn't protecting a secret. It was protecting our family's future. A few weeks later, everything started falling apart. Dad's small business stopped making enough money. Customers disappeared. Bills kept arriving. Relatives began whispering, "Robert's father is finished. He'll lose everything." Even some family members stopped visiting our house. Every night, Dad came home exhausted. But before going to sleep, he always looked at that wooden box. Then, he looked at me, as if reminding me that our promise still mattered. One rainy night, I finally asked him, "Dad, if everyone thinks we've already lost, why are you still smiling?" Dad placed his hand on my shoulder, then quietly said, "Because people only see today. They never see tomorrow. Never let the world's opinion become your future." Those words stayed in my heart forever. I didn't realize it then, but they would guide every decision I made. The following month, something happened that nobody expected. A man in a black suit knocked on our front door. He wasn't a customer. He wasn't a neighbor. He handed Dad an envelope. Dad opened it, read the first page, and suddenly, the smile disappeared from his face without saying a word. He looked at me, then at the wooden box. At that moment, I knew our family's biggest test had finally begun. Dad slowly folded the letter. He didn't let Mom read it. He didn't let me touch it. Instead, he walked straight to his room, opened the old wooden box, placed the letter inside, locked it, and slipped the tiny key into his pocket. That was the first time I realized the letter and the box were somehow connected that night. I woke up to the sound of voices. Dad was sitting alone in the living room. Grandpa was beside him. I quietly stood behind the wall, listening. Grandpa sighed. "You can still tell him." Dad slowly shook his head. "No, not yet. If he learns the truth too early, they'll destroy everything." Grandpa looked down, then whispered, "I just hope he'll be strong enough." I had no idea they were talking about me. The next morning, life went on, as if nothing had happened. Dad smiled. Mom smiled. But I could feel it. Something had changed. Every visitor, every phone call, every knock on the door made Dad nervous. Yet every evening, he would place his hand on that wooden box, close his eyes, and quietly whisper, "Just a little longer." A few days later, I noticed something strange. The same man in the same black coat kept standing across the street. He never entered our house. He never spoke. He simply watched us. Morning, afternoon, evening. One day, I finally asked Dad, "Do you know that man?" Dad looked outside. His face instantly turned pale. Then he calmly replied, "Robbie, if you ever see him again, promise me, you'll come straight home. No explanation, no answers, only another promise." That weekend, Dad took me to the backyard. He knelt beside the old oak tree, carefully dug a small hole, and buried something. When he stood up, he looked at me and smiled. "If anything ever happens to me, you'll know where to find it." My heart started racing. I wanted to ask him why, but something inside me told me the answer would change my life forever. The very next morning, the wooden box was gone. Dad searched every room. Mom stood frozen. Grandpa whispered, "They've started." For the first time, I saw fear in my father's eyes. That night, Dad handed me an old envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. It simply said, "Never chase money. Protect the family's name first." Dad smiled. That's the first lesson. At 16, I left school for a year. Not because I wanted to, because Dad needed me. Every dollar mattered. People laughed, but I remembered the promise. Our first business idea collapsed. We lost every dollar. Friends walked away. Relatives said, "I told you." Dad only smiled. This isn't the end. One evening, an old man entered our shop. He bought nothing. Before leaving, he looked at Dad, then at me, and quietly said, "The strongest families always survive the longest storms." Grandpa finally spoke. The box never contained money. It contained our family's greatest responsibility. We finally learned someone wanted our family legacy destroyed forever. For years, they had been waiting for Dad to give up. One afternoon, Dad suddenly collapsed. The ambulance arrived. Doctors rushed him inside. Before the doors closed, he looked at me and smiled. For the first time, I was alone. No father, no guidance, only a promise. I remembered the old oak tree. I dug beneath it. There it was, the tiny key, exactly where Dad had hidden it. With shaking hands, I unlocked the wooden box. Inside, there was no gold, no cash, no jewels, only old papers, letters, and one notebook. The first page read, "If you're reading this, it means I've trusted you." Tears filled my eyes. Every page contained plans, ideas, mistakes, dreams Dad never had the chance to finish. I decided to finish what Dad had started, not for money, for him. 5 years passed. Nothing became easy. Every success came after 10 failures. But I never stopped. One opportunity changed everything. People finally noticed our family's work. The same people who once laughed now wanted to work with us. Life had changed. Whenever I wanted to quit, I remembered Dad saying, "Protect the family's name." That sentence became my strength. Even after years, I never told anyone what the promise really was. Not yet. Our family name started appearing everywhere. People admired our journey, but nobody knew the secret behind it. I returned to the old house. Everything looked smaller, except the memories. Mom looked at me and quietly said, "Your father would be proud." Inside the diary, I discovered one last sealed letter. It had my name on it. The letter said, "Success isn't measured by how much you own. It's measured by how many people you lift." Our relatives gathered again. This time, nobody laughed. Everybody listened. For the first time, I told everyone about the promise Dad had made me. The room fell silent. Some cried. Others couldn't believe it. Dad once wrote, "I didn't choose the strongest son. I chose the one who would never break his word." I placed the wooden box back inside our home, not as a treasure, but as a reminder. One evening, my own little son asked, "Dad, what's inside that old box?" I smiled, just like my father once did. I sat beside my son, placed the wooden box in his hands, and quietly said, "Tonight, I'm not asking you to become successful. I'm asking you to protect this family's values." He looked into my eyes, raised his little hand, and made the same promise that my father once asked of me. Some families leave money, some leave houses. My father left me a promise, and that promise built a legacy that no one could ever take away. True success isn't becoming rich. True success is protecting your family's values, keeping your promises, and earning respect that lasts forever.